All right, thank you. Wow, you really did a good job introducing everybody. So I'm going to try to keep it a little bit shorter here, but thank you all. This is like, I'm so excited that this is the last panel. We've had a fantastic summit. For everybody who hasn't signed up for tomorrow's career fair, keep signing up. We have 5,000 people coming, so it's going to be awesome with amazing companies as well. And hopefully today's conversation will really inspire you to show up tomorrow as well and create space for yourself. I'm also thrilled to be introducing this group because there's some women in here who I've admired since the 7th grade. That's true. They know who they are. One of them's laughing right now. I was in the same class as Alexandra and Alissa here in New York. Kasara, I have like this abstract memory of. She was in an older class. I'm recalling like this force that was up there in Olympus land.
Stop it.
You're just, and Natalya, I actually like we sort of we went to the same school, but it wasn't at the same time, another school. But I've had a chance to learn about her tremendous work, obviously in the music business, but then being a doula as well is amazing, and talk about creating safe spaces. And I've also caught up on Kasara's life, which I'm so excited to hear more about today. So, on a more acute level, I know Alexandra and Alissa. So, they showed me since elementary school what it means to be hardworking, perseverant, good humans overall. I don't think they realize what role models they've actually been to me and others. So thank you for that. I get to say that very publicly right now. And they've also built spaces where they've thrived, and I've watched them do that over many years now. So I'm going to step back today, give them space, give this group space to really share how you've all created those spaces where you've thrived, so that the other people who are listening in and in the chat room can learn and also ask you questions. I'm going to bring in questions as well. So I know we got bios from Meg, but I would love a little bit to hear your journeys and how you actually got into those jobs and roles and progressed. So I'm going to start with Kasara because I'm looking right at her now. And I said that she came from Olympus land, so I'm sorry to raise the expectation so much, but I'll have you kick off on your journey and your company. And again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Katharine, and the three ladies down there. It's amazing just to see, faces from our youth. It really is. It's really awesome. So thank you for creating this space, Katharine. So how did I get here? I don't really know where I am. So the story of how I've gotten here is probably a little weird and wonky. Before 2020 came and made everything crazy for everyone, it was a little already crazy for me. And that might be why 2020, I'm dealing with it, I think maybe a little different than a lot of other people. So I started off my career as a business consultant with Arthur Andersen right after undergrad at UVA, and then lost my job very publicly because of Enron. And then I did a bunch of other things for a few years before I went to law school. I worked for a congresswoman, I worked for a nonprofit, doing really awesome work with both of them. And then I went to Howard Law and came out and went to a law firm. And I was at one of the top law firms in the city. We won't say which one. I was at one of the top law firms in the city. And I like to say, which I probably shouldn't, the work that I did is the work that broke the world, right? So I was a private equity and mergers and acquisitions attorney, and I graduated in 2007. And so I lost my job from that world, as did so many of us, in another very public way, right? Like because of the Great Recession, and because of how we were handling money and human lives and all of that. I did get great experience and wonderful contacts and all of that, but nonetheless, I realized that corporate America may not be my safe space. And so I started my own company, Diaspora Travel and Trade, and it brought me so much joy and so much peace, because during that time I also had a lot of deaths in the family. And so traveling the world and being able to curate experiences for people seemed like a pretty awesome idea. And so I decided that's what I wanted to do, and I just did it. And so for the past 5 years, I've been running my company, which is not a travel agency. People think it is because we work internationally. It's a consulting company, and we solve problems. We, all of that. And so that's how I've gotten here. And now with, what happened in 2020, I say, where am I? Because travel is a completely different beast, right? And so I think that all of us can, in all of our stories, it's about, what are those ideas? Bending, not breaking, going with the flow, being able to watch the signs, listening to ancestors when they're tugging on your toes and whispering in your ear. And so that's a little bit about me and how I came to where I am.
Fantastic. We're going to share the link in the chat box as well, because there's a lot of people in there who are asking for stuff already. So Alissa, I'm going to go to you. You're down the street here in Brooklyn. So
yes. Again, I want to echo thank you, Katharine, and to everyone for having this. It's so nice to be here with, people and care about. So this is so cozy. But how I got to where I am now, I always wanted to be in a helping position or helping profession. Started thinking about being pre-med, et cetera. That obviously didn't work out. And then when I realized I was really interested in psychology, I landed on the fact that I wanted to really be able to craft and develop experiences and programs for youth and families to meet them where they are. And that's mostly because of my experiences. I was in a lot of programs as a kid, just a lot. I grew up in a single parent household, so that was really helpful to be involved in a lot of things, but not just to have something to do. I realized I really enjoyed all of the programs. I enjoyed creating programs. Alex knows, you guys know, Katharine, you also know some of the things I did at Trinity, just random talent shows with kids from the public school across the street, and just being very involved in the community. I feel very strongly about community service and public engagement. And so as I started to just navigate my career, I realized I didn't want to be like a traditional psychologist. So even though I went through grad school in counseling psychology, I started a doctoral program at the University of Maryland. And very late in the game, I decided to withdraw from that program and leave that experience behind, but definitely stayed at the University of Maryland and worked in different public engagement spaces. So I mostly worked in nonprofit, working with youth opportunity programs, enrichment programs, and I really found my love and passion there, just exposing kids to different experiences, because life is about experiences and exposure. And I was so blessed to have a lot of amazing experiences that really shaped who I am today and how I kind of keep myself balanced and grounded. And so as I moved on, I always wanted to move back to New York. So I left the DC area and then came back to New York and just started working in that field. Started at Columbia for a little bit, doing some program management across different programs within their public engagement sector. But then I wanted to leave and check out some other nonprofit experiences. And I found that I didn't really like it there. I really enjoyed higher ed for a number of reasons, mostly because of the resources that are associated with higher educational institutions. They tend to have a lot of funding, so they can create these experiences for the local community. And then also because I do believe that it is their responsibility to uplift the communities that they inhabit as, an institution of higher education. A lot of them have these community impact agreements and things like that. So they sort of have to do that. So why not hold them to task and be a part of that? And so now I'm back at Columbia working at the Zuckerman Institute in their public programs department, just doing things very similar to this, putting on public programming for the community in different spaces and within different topics. The baking came along.
Oh, the baking. Yeah, I want to hear about the baking.
That came along just from like when I was a kid. I always loved to bake. And so how I integrated that is really random. I just started bringing baked goods to work and people would eat them. And then someone said, you know what, you should sell these. And I said, you know what, you're right, I should. So I started to figure that out and slowly build a business. But at the same time, I didn't want to let go of all of this community work that I was doing. So slowly started to build Born and Bred. And Born and Bred is because, you know, I'm from Brooklyn and people say, where are you from? Born and bred Brooklyn. That's a saying, born and bred wherever, but born and bred Brooklyn, honestly. So that's why I named it that. But I really wanted to figure out how I can like blend the two. You know, I love baking. It's kind of like my own personal therapy. I zone out. I love creating. It's also another way for me to create an experience for people through food. And so I started thinking about like the notion of mindfulness. When I was doing my grad work, mindfulness was something I really was grounded by. And so I realized I could combine the two, especially during the pandemic, and really engage with people online and create these mindful baking experiences for folks that can really just like center themselves through this experience and learn how to bake a little bit. So that's where I am now. I still hold both of them dear to my heart. I don't want to lose either one. And so right now I'm existing in both spaces.
Well, I want to get into some of the tactical, like how do you set up these spaces, all that stuff. So we have some specific learnings through this, but I want to go to our other two ladies. So I'm going to go to Natalya and then I'll close up with Alexandra, who actually brought everybody together. So Natalya, tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Thank you, Katharine. Thank you, PowerToFly, for the opportunity. And Meg did such a great job with the bio. And, you know, Alissa, I'm not from Brooklyn. Neither are the rest of us. So we're going to have to claim something. Red Harlem.
I know, I'm a transient.
I worked at Sony Music for a good chunk of my early career, and that was born out of them recruiting while I was at Harvard. Always knew I wanted to go into entertainment. I wasn't going to go on a path that was laid out, unfortunately, which caused a lot of anxiety, merging on to having a new opportunity. I knew I didn't want to do Teach for America or consult or go to grad school at that time, but I pulled through at the last minute. And frankly, I didn't know what I was doing, you know, but I had confidence enough to just get in there based on being a New Yorker. First of all, if you can take the subway, you can figure almost anything else out. So there was that in the foundation, and just sort of got into it and had an incredible opportunity at Epic Records at the time and stayed within music. Did a short stint to leave to go and work in TV news. And then afterwards was crying to come back to where I was from, and came home and sort of just went up the ladder within Sony. And I would say what kind of was a fundamental shift for me was becoming a mother, because I did see how empowering that experience could be. I have a daughter. And that's what moved me to really leave the industry at that time and focus on her care, my care, and become a doula and train to do that. And I honestly feel like when I merged back into coming back to music, my goal and mission was serving as a creative doula. It's really the same process. Like, we're putting together releases for music and artist projects, and how do I support, encourage them, and be able to provide everything they need? Because the baby's coming out one way or another. So the album's coming out one way or another. And being able to take that sort of personal mindfulness and sort of 3D awareness of who I was as a person, and it's even informed and made my work better. So that's something where I'm able to do it on the side, integrate. I was so empowered by my own birth experience that being able to show this to my daughter has been an amazing opportunity for me, but also being very aware that my career wasn't going to fulfill some of those spaces for me personally. And it was my responsibility to craft what that example would be for my life. Within music, it is still very male leaning, still very homogenous. And part of what I enjoy about staying within it is being able to encourage, inspire, and mentor the women beneath me that maybe I didn't have that experience with. So that's the long end of the stitch. One day I might be putting out an album. One day I might be helping someone deliver a baby. I'm doing some baking, not born and bred in Brooklyn, but Harlem represent.
Yeah, Manhattan. But you had a home birth too, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah,
which I'm like, sounds terrifying, but
yeah. I'm the type of person, Katharine, where, super type A, I have to master all of it. I did also get like a yoga teacher certification. I can't half step on anything. It's a problem, but like instead of just taking classes, no, I have to learn how to teach the classes in order to care about it. So it's an expensive perfectionist challenge a little bit, and not saying I don't recommend having an unplanned birth. Highly don't recommend it, but it happens. And now I want to empower other women in their birth experiences so they don't have to be as crazy as me.
Awesome. Well, we've got some comments about being creative doulas, so that's next level. All right, Alexandra, thank you for bringing us all together. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then we're going to get into some tactical space making talk.
Okay, so you almost moved me to tears, Katharine, because I really do appreciate your compliment. I had wanted to set up this space. I'm going to talk about why I wanted this panel, and then I'll talk about myself. The ladies that I selected for the panel are women that I have leaned on for decades. And what's beautiful is, yes, Katharine found me I say she found me. I say she found me in the 7th grade because in my school, I was paired with someone else and I gravitated towards her.
Oh, I gotta remember who it was. Anyway, I'm quiet.
But it was great because I was new to this private school, and I'm from the Bronx, but I went to school in El Barrio. My mother's Puerto Rican. I'm Puerto Rican and Jamaican. And so I came to Trinity very loud. I'm loud now. And so every woman on this call in this room at some point in my life has helped me to embrace that this is part of me and not to feel ashamed of that. And that's very important as far as like my work. So I went to college. I went to a small liberal arts college in Pennsylvania. I came back after 4 years without a degree. I was interning at Sony Pictures around the same time that Natalya was there. And then I had another job where I was working at Starbucks, and I was trying to get into film, but I did not have a degree. And they were saying that it was one of the new requirements for all the new positions. And so I ended up having to go back to school. And I say having to because my mother guilted me into it. And I went back to school with my mother, and I ended up I had originally been in school for 4 years. So I was like, well, much like Natalya, I've got to show something for those first 4 years, which is how I ended up with 2 bachelors. So I got a degree in Bachelor's of Science in Business with a minor in Spanish. And then I did my sociology bachelor's. When I pursued my master's in business, it was just because I wanted to make sure that no one could ever tell me no again. I was smart. I went to a college. I didn't graduate, but I was still smart. And so it felt very defeating to come home. And so then I got on like this mission to just get every degree I ever wanted, because I was never going to knock on a door again and someone tell me that I didn't have the requirement. So now I'm in the private, I was in the private sector for a couple of years. I am now in the public sector, but I do, I mentor within my federal agency. I try to make everyone feel like they are comfortable, because I think that people who are comfortable are productive. And so part of it is part of my management. But I also think that there has to be, we have to make space for everyone to bring their talent. Otherwise, we're going to consistently have sort of a homogenous message, because people will be constantly tailoring their message to what they think is people want to hear, instead of feeling comfortable enough to be in the space and say, well, I don't think that works. So I think that's a big roundabout, but that's just me. So now I'm here. I do a little bit of consulting on the side, helping with sort of operations and marketing with several people that I have that are friends that have their own private businesses. But right now, I am just so blessed and honored to be accompanied by all of you. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, I remember your laugh. It was loud, but it was welcoming, and it was
welcoming. I love that.
It drew people in. So I was getting some good comments. We got one that says, I legit want to be a friend of everyone on this panel. The energy is incredible just from the intros. Thank you, Liz. Thomasina says, they're really phenomenal women. Agility is key. And
that's my best friend.
Oh,
sorry.
You have a plant.
You have to do that. That's how you create a safe space. Bring in people that will.
Sorry. I couldn't not, when you have sisters, those safe spaces, like you said her name. There are not many Thomasinas in the world. You didn't even say her last name. It has to be her. I love her. Sorry.
Well, I see another high school friend here too, Juliet. So let's talk about that. I mean, this is like, we're definitely like, people are showing up, they're creating the space, they're boosting, they're elevating. And so I don't know, I'll start with Alissa, because like tactically you're doing that at Columbia and creating those spaces. And I want to open up on like how an institution does it, but how you do it in work, right?
Yeah. Well, it's difficult because there are levels of bureaucracy that are impenetrable at times, but, or at least they feel that way. But, you have to hold people accountable to the things that they say. And where I am right now, there is this community agreement, and there is this space that they occupy. And in order to really be in that space, you have to have some sort of buy-in from the community, unless it will just fall apart. So what we do at just our level in public programs is we create events and outreach programming for community members, kids, adults, everybody. But how we do that is nuanced, because what we want to do is to bring in the public and, expose them to neuroscience. I work at a neuroscience research facility, so it's very, very specific. But you want to also engage them and meet them where they are. And you don't want to make it seem like science, which is where I am right now, the discipline I'm in right now, is only available in a hospital or a lab. So you bring people to the forefront that look like the community members. You also create a space for people who are a little bit more junior to share that message. So we don't want the principal investigators of the lab, the people who run the labs. We want the graduate students. We want the postdocs. We want the lab managers. We want to know who these people are and how they got there. So that's what we do. We specifically look for people who are at a more, and I hate even saying that, more junior level, but that's the only way I understand to describe it at this point, but a little bit more junior in their career, and share them with the community so that they see, first of all, people want to hear from them and you have a voice. And also this will help you just craft your delivery a bit more as well, because as a graduate student, you have to present all the time. They're going to be doing their thesis, they're going to be doing their dissertation. So we want to create those spaces so that publicly, you know, people feel a bit more connected. And then we also provide a platform for these junior scientists. Internally, we hold ourselves accountable as a team. I work on a small team of 6 women. Amen to all lady teams, by the way. So I work on a small team of 6 women, and we hold ourselves accountable by making sure that we are sharpening our tools. And so as a group, we don't necessarily explicitly always talk about diversity and inclusion, but we talk about the things that will support those conversations. So a lot of our team meetings involve topics like how to have difficult conversations, how to give and receive feedback. And those are tools that you need in order to create a safe space. If you don't know how to do that, then, you know, the work that you're doing, it's going to be incredibly difficult, not impossible, but it doesn't make sense to necessarily leave those tools untouched and unsharpened. So that's how we do it at an institutional level. And you have to find the people that, and I'm just blessed to have great people on my team, but you really do have to find the people on your team or to bring onto a team that will move that forward, getting on the same page and making sure that someone on that team can go to a higher up and hold them accountable for this relationship that they want to have with the community in my sense. So
Yeah, no, those are great points, and I took some notes there too, so thank you. I got a good question here from Liz, which is, how do you create a safe space for people and explain why it's needed so others don't claim they're being excluded? And this is actually something people have talked about a lot at this summit, and it's interesting because like when we sent out invitations to this summit, some people were like, why? Some of the responses were shocking in the sense that we need this summit in order to create these conversations. And no, we're not excluding people, but we do need to focus and create extra attention. So who wants to take this question? Sorry, it's a bit of a tough one. Alexandra.
I was going to ask Kasara to do that for me.
we were both thinking our task force work. Yeah. How do we prevent people from being excluded when they are being excluded?
Or when they kind of meet? Yeah.
No, I understand.
I know you're on some really interesting task force too. So
yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, part of creating the safe spaces is uncomfortable, right? The process, the individual process that you have to go through, the process of when you're speaking with people, the things you got to talk about, the journey to the safe space is not always safe. It's not always comfy. It's not always, you know, the thing that you want it to be exactly. And so I guess I ask with humility and I challenge people who are doing this work to then ask with humility and challenge those who they are hearing might feel excluded, to ask them why they're feeling excluded, right? Like, so a part of my work and what I understand, part of my work, what I say is that we're decolonizing travel, right? Decolonizing the concept of trade internationally. So that what that means is that when I go to another place, when I go to another country, I don't go there and say, this is what I think you need. I see your infrastructure. I see what you're lacking, what I have here. And so this is what I'm going to offer you. No, I go someplace and I learn about that place and I immerse myself in the culture of that place so that I don't feel like a colonist, right? So that when I do come with suggestions, those suggestions are coming from the people who I am claiming that I'm helping. And so how does that relate to this? So in creating the safe space for one group, we may be making other people feel unsafe or excluded. And so, and for me, I don't think that we should just shrug that off as nothing, right? I do think that we have to address that, but we have to let them know that that is not what we are addressing at this moment. That is not the topic of discussion at this moment. There's a reason that we have the current topic of discussion. I think there are a lot of folks that don't necessarily want to engage with people who feel excluded. And I understand that perspective as well. But from my work and from what I've done, I find that it's just easier and better to talk to people, to have that conversation. So do I think it's possible because I think the actual question is, how do you create a safe space for people and explain why it's needed so others don't claim they're being excluded? Okay, so I'm answering it correctly. You explain with the vigor and the passion for the people that you're creating the space for, but at the same time, with the humility and the respect for the people who have their own feelings. Because at the end of it, we are in this together, right? We're on this planet together. There's none of this stuff we can do separately. And so we don't want to shift feelings of exclusion from one space to the other. We want to create not even feelings of inclusion. We want to just take those words out of the discussion so that it's not about exclusion or inclusion. So I think how do you do it? How do you have those conversations? You have them, right? And go to them knowing that a lot of us present all of our emotions as fear or anger, and mostly anger, even when we're hurt, right? And so many times, the people who are feeling excluded and who come across as angry are actually hurt and afraid. And so if we go to those folks, not changing the focus, right? Like where we have a focus on what we're doing, not changing the focus, but if we go to those folks with the humility and the respect for those feelings about where they are and explain, I think that we begin to have kind of real lasting conversations and change. That's
thank you. Now, Natalya, I'm going to go to you, see if you have a follow-up on that.
Yes, I want to give kind of a practical example of working at a talent agency, and we would have these opportunities around Women's Day and have luncheons where the women would gather and the men felt very excluded. And it was a space that we needed to have conversations, but I feel like what I would have done differently in that opportunity is also been able to put a tent pole when the whole community would get together and have the issues. So part of what I found about excluding the women and having a conversation about it was it was predominantly male at the company and our highest earning clients, etc., is that we needed allies, but we were also excluding the allies to create this space in a way. And so I just was sort of challenging our human resources and other folks on the team to say, what do we do? Do we put another temple where, yes, you can have the women's luncheon and have this conversation, but where is the opportunity for the whole community to then come together? So I feel like that will ease some anxiety where you say, this is the work we're doing in this season. But I find, we'll use an example of dating. Even if you're dating an accountant and it's their busy season, if they say April 15th, we're hanging out, it will ease some of that anxiety and that anger. So where can we put a date on the tent pole where this is our opportunity as a community to get together from our groups and have this conversation? So I think it's acknowledging where people may be, but also groups needing the ally and where we are in the stages of conversation and meeting people where they're at. But back to a point you said where a lot of corporations are not really incentivized to do some of this work, right? They're not losing resources, they're not losing talent. And so you have to show really where the value is for these conversations. So it's really an opportunity to craft to say, the exclusion is for the moment, if we even want to call it that, but it's wherever affinity groups or groups are meeting together. I think the challenge for communities is to have a holistic team conversation based on what they've taken away from that, because we can't assume because someone doesn't fit into a specific group that they're not integral to this conversation. Like, those are people we can actually convert to understand what it is once we're able to craft and as a team have these spaces to take it to. So with the safe space, I think the objective should be to also be able to push this together as an agenda in the greater space that we're in, which is often where the challenges lie, but that's where the work is and where the discomfort is.
May I say something else?
Oh, yeah.
That was awesome, Natalya. The stuff that you were saying about allyship and I liked the example that you gave about if you're dating an accountant on April 15th. I think that's a very I like that a lot. This reminds me, Katharine, I don't know if you remember Alex and Alissa, and I only say those names, Natalya, because we were all at Trinity together. When we were there, that book that came out, Why Do All the Black Kids?
Oh yeah, I have it right there.
You have and so I'm sure, Natalya, you
I was thinking about that book while you were talking as well. I'm glad
exactly. So I just, I won't speak too long. I'll let someone else weigh in, or if we're going to move forward. But it just, we're talking about the same stuff 20 years later, and we were almost forced to talk about it as children.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like,
yeah, we had Diversity Day. Do you remember Diversity Day?
Diversity Day.
That was, but I think what's interesting.
I clearly remember Diversity Day. Sorry.
I mean, they tried, but it was just, it's. But
Katharine, before you respond, can I just say one quick thing?
Yeah, of course.
When Natalya was speaking and Kasara also added in, I wish we could get to a place where, and this is my eternal optimist bone kicking in, but I wish we could get to a place in this world where when people create safe spaces, the people who feel that they're being excluded would create a space for themselves to reflect on what it is that is propelling those others to create a safe space. Like, what is this need for safe spaces? Because the reflection is really important. Reflecting on yourself, reflecting on your group's actions and just group behavior. I wish we could get to that point instead of this whole like FOMO thing that everyone's like, I'm missing out on whatever they're doing over there, even though you see me every other hour of the day, but this 1 hour when I'm in this safe space. So that's just my hope for the world, that, people could do more reflecting when they see an initiation of a safe space by a specific group. Hey, let's talk over here and reflect, like, what is this need about, and what can we do to support the people who feel that they need a safe space, instead of the people who are creating the safe space then come back and then debrief everything and say, oh, this is what we need. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too much into the New York private school situation, but I kind of do. But what's shocking to me is like the articles I've been reading in the New York Post and the New York Times and other things from parents who are literally part of exclusionary clubs in this city and in the Hamptons and in Nantucket or wherever, complaining about there being organizations at their children's schools creating safe spaces for people. And like the question for me is like, if these are what can these institutions almost do to ingrain in the children early on that like your parents are part of these spaces, they're not even recognizing it. And we actually need to make up for a lot of lost time here by creating safe spaces for others. So I don't know, I hope that wasn't too coded in what I was saying, but my question is like, I have a 7-year-old at a private school here in New York. They're trying really, really hard. So, but I don't know.
I'm like, I'm going to field on this one. I want to field on this one. So one of the things that I have spoken to, during this time of reflection that we've been blessed with over this past year, as you are aware, I do work with our former school on anti-racism work. And part of that even called me to, and so now I'm going to be very specific. I basically bullied my way into the anti-racism task force. It was curated as a space. We got, our school got it wrong, our alma mater. They sent a 7-page letter of their selections for the anti-racism task force. And when I got to the bottom of the letter, I realized that it was 7 pages to tell me that they did not choose me. In which at that point I was like, there's a lot of work to be done here. And this is not an admissions process. We need every single person who offered to be part of this to be included. And seeing as we are now discussing things that I brought up 20 years ago, I feel that it only be important that I be part of this conversation now. And I may have copied an alumni director or something on the email. And so I thank everyone. Like, I feel like part of that is me knowing that I have people like the ladies on this call who support me and are like, no, there's nothing wrong with saying you are supposed to be there. I think that the more that we have these conversations, we actually do need to reach out to people. And so part of my suggestion to the school was reach out to people who don't want to be involved. Because what you're missing by creating these task forces 20, 30, 40 years later, because there are people who graduated in the 70s on these calls. What you're missing is all of the people who completely graduated, disconnected, and wanted nothing to do because of whatever. And that could even be the LGBTQIA, because there was a whole issue when they even tried to start that affinity group when we were in high school. And so it is, again, speaking to what Alissa and Natalya and Kasara were all talking about making sure that the people who feel excluded are part of the buy-in, but understanding that we do have this work ahead. We do have this temple right here that we're focused on. Yes, tax season will be over on May 17th this year, but I've got you on the 18th. And this is where we are now, making sure that I had a friend tell me, oh, let me pull my daughter out of school. And I said, no, you leave your daughter in that school because it's an excellent school. But what you do is you take them to task. You hold them to task, like Alyssa's holding her employer to task. You make sure that these conversations are being had when they're difficult, when they're uncomfortable. And you make sure that you can do your part for your child, maybe exposing your daughter and your son to different people and things like that, which they are exposed to. But that's part of the issue that we have being in a smaller knit community in New York, is that you don't have to be exposed to anything you don't want to be exposed to. And so I think that's where this kind of inclusion, exclusion, FOMO mindset kind of comes into play.
And can I add, Alex, also that I think it's helpful for parents to explain to their kids that what it means to be safe is different for a lot of people. And if people are thinking about what is a safe space, your safe space could be the Hamptons, or Nantucket, like you were saying, Katharine. Like, those are places where people go to feel a certain way. And that's really what a safe space is. You create an environment or go to an environment to feel positivity, to feel validated, to feel like you can speak the truth and be honest about who you are, and maybe challenge people without feeling like it's going to destroy your life. Like, now I don't get that job, or now I don't get that promotion, or get that raise, or now I don't have any friends at work anymore. So it's like, those are what safe spaces are. And if people are confused as to what that is and why safe spaces are being created, it's like, we all have our safe spaces. We just may not call them that. And now this is the nomenclature that we're bringing into our culture and our society at this moment. But we have them. Just explain and create a parallel so people can understand. There's always an example that already exists in this world. So just find that and use it to explain, instead of trying to really assign it to this part of who you are. It is that too, but it's really about how you feel.
Such wisdom. Well, I think the parents should be should be forced to take like 20 hours on this to deprogram.
I'm so in love with
Like
you.
that should be part of the admissions. I mean, well, it's just like, you know, they want to say that their school cares about diversity and creating safe spaces, and then they bristle at certain things, and they don't, because they never have taken the time to really understand and also why it's important and valuable. So
self-reflection, right? I mean, you said it, Katharine, you said that many of the people, the students or the parents who are complaining or questioning or making a face at an affinity group are a part of clubs that actually exclude, right? These clubs are not designed, these affinity groups are not designed, or safe spaces are not designed to exclude. They're designed, and their purpose is to include and create a place. And in doing so, it creates a box that some people are not a part of. But that's not the purpose. But you brought up a really good point that there exists activities and clubs and literal spaces in the world that have excluded people for centuries. You know, there's never been a time where everyone in the whole world has felt safe. Most people in the world don't feel safe on the world, right? Don't even just talk about the United States, but the world. And probably most people in the United States don't feel safe as a constant in their life. So you're talking about a level of self-reflection that, as hard as this, difficult and traumatic as this year was, Alex, you said that, right? Like, we've been afforded time to do that. And hopefully folks that weren't doing it before are doing it now. I wrote when I was doing a little bit of the like promotion and talking about this event on Facebook, I say that there are people whose their everyday life was safe. That is what or at least that was their expectation. A lot of people don't have that. But this year, even for those people, safety was taken away, right? Even for people who have the clubs, even for people who could go to the Hamptons during this time, a level of safety was taken away from everybody over this year. And so taking the good with the bad, that's life, hoping, being the eternal optimist, like Alissa said, right? Hoping that, having faith that as a result of this year, people will do that type of reflection that you're talking about, Katharine, because that's what you're asking for. That's what you're begging for.
Yeah. Maybe finally. I mean, they're certainly talking about it like there's no tomorrow. So, and everybody's looking at those Instagram accounts. Because it's all over.
Might be better than thoughts and prayers. You never know. Sorry.
Yeah. So many comments about those Instagram accounts. Great. Well, I want to, first of all, we're getting some great comments in here. We got a good one that says, good, like the New York City sirens are making her nostalgic because she's an ATL transplant. So I think
ATL, I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. I was smiling. I was like, oh, sorry. Okay.
Well, we have like no time left. We have 8 minutes. It went by really fast. So I want to just go around quickly and everybody give a little words of wisdom. And we've had some people also ask if we can share your information with them. So we'll do a little double opt-in and circle back on that. Great chat as well. So any you're all still super young, but any words of advice on your years of wisdom? So I'll start with Kasara because she's going to go like Brady Bunch style around. So you're next, Alexandra.
Oh, my closing words. You know, my dad used to say, my dad passed. It was one of the things that happened during that time that I was talking about. Sorry, that's New York. Everyone has their dirt bikes out on the streets with no dirt. Okay, so my dad passed. A lot of family members passed at the same time, and so I was actually diagnosed with PTSD because every time something wonderful happened for me for about over a decade, something horrific happened. When I bought my first place, my father was diagnosed with terminal small cell lung cancer. When the date, so actually before that, the date on my letter to law school was I didn't receive it on that day, but the date of my acceptance letter to law school is the day that my maternal grandmother passed. As I was entering into law school and getting, my first round of grades, my paternal grandmother passed. Other folks in there. Then when I graduated from law school and I told God that I was not taking this bar exam again. I'm taking it one time, so we're gonna need to pass. And I passed. And when I was looking at it, as soon as I looked at it, as soon as I had the joy of looking at it, my mother calls me on my cell phone to tell me that my last grandparent had passed, my paternal grandfather. And so I'm just giving you like the highlights. There were much more that happened. And every time something wonderful happened, something like that happened for me for a really long time. And I was really, I was sick. I was really sick for a long time. I didn't have any safe spaces because the definition for me, my elders were now all ancestors, and I felt lost and alone and all of these things. And so I leave people with the concept that it is really about the journey, like the safe space is that concept of destination. And that's the concept of I'm gonna be okay when I get there. It's gonna be okay when I'm in this thing. It's going to, the gerund, right? Or the ing form, the movement form. No, it is. You create your safe space by accepting that safe does not always mean comfortable. Safe does not always mean exactly what you want. Safe is not always beautiful, but safe is it can have a piece of all of those things, and it is what you need and not necessarily what someone else needs, right? And so figuring out what you need, finding the path to that, and knowing that it is a journey. And it's not about you're gonna be safe or you're gonna be okay when you get to this point. No, you're okay right now, and just keep saying that to yourself. So that's what I learned. That's how I'm okay.
Thank you. We got some thank yous for that as well, for you sharing that. So Alexandra.
I was gonna say, so just to go back to what I was saying in the very beginning, I was very blessed at a young age to have people who accepted me as myself. I had joked on a private call with Kasara that I didn't even realize I had a really thick, heavy Puerto Rican accent until I got to college when I got to college the first time, and I watched my elementary school video. And I said to Kasara, I said, one of the reasons why I have so much love for you, especially Katharine, is that I did come into an area where everyone else wanted me to be something else. And that was never expected in our friendship. And so that safe space was extended. Kasara was able to extend that space to me. And so because I constantly had places where I felt comfortable being 100% myself, people who I could be myself with, it helped me to learn and nurture the parts of me that I wanted to polish. Not that society said, okay, well, you can't, go off on this one every day. It was just like, well, it doesn't really serve me. My mama used to say, you can't kick every dog in your path. You won't get anywhere. And I never listened. But in my mind now, it's just like, oh, and part of it's being in the South too. So it's like, oh, okay. But I'll carry on and I'll do my thing. But part of it is making sure that I create spaces. And if I have to be my unabashed self to make sure that someone else feels comfortable being their self, I'm going to do that. I will be loud and in the place so that that I have many degrees. Yes, I am teaching you. Yes, I am going to hold you to a high standard, but I am still just a little Puerto Rican Jamaican girl from the Bronx who used to go to Ireland in the summer. Like I'm still me. I'm still the same person who I was in the 7th grade. But I was able to keep the parts of me that I valued because I was nurtured by those spaces.
Nice. All right, I'm gonna get emotional. Alissa, save me.
Oh, well, I don't know if I can help with that because I want to just keep the energy going and the points that these two wonderful women just made. And I was just thinking about the idea of safe spaces and realizing that you kind of are your first safe space. And the piece of reflection is really needed in order for you to then create any safety in their outside world. Because if you're not reflecting and understand what you need and what serves you best and how you show up to things, then you will never feel safe. So I'll just say that.
That's really what I wanted to say, and also to give an acronym for everyone because I love acronyms, but on how to work with yourself. One was given to me of pies, like your physical, your intellectual, your emotional, and spiritual. So if you're at a loss on how you're working on yourself and really just connecting with your body and who you are as a person, I always have goals within those areas. So it makes me very mindful and then how I'm showing up, because what am I doing for myself in a very tactical perspective, physically, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually at all times.
Beautiful. All right, let me close out. Meg's here to tell me to be quiet, but I'm just going to say thank you, ladies. You actually make me want to go to a reunion, which Alexandra will tell you that I sort of rejected reunions for a couple of reasons, but
Reunion, Katharine.
Yeah, I'm Natalya. Maybe I'll go to one. I'll go to the shape of
Yes!
but bring me back in the fold. But anyway, thank you so much, ladies. This was amazing. And Meg, you're gonna wrap it all up for us. So
I'll bring it on home. I just want to say a huge thank you to you, ladies. This was really amazing to get to sit in on and kind of be a fly on the wall for this conversation. So thank you so much, and a huge round of applause for all of you.